no more time to waste. Let's get focused because, as I said, there were, I believe, 3 very compelling things that happened over the last couple of days since I last recorded that have a lot of people really down that college football will not happen. I already mentioned them, but I'll repeat them now, and I will repeat them again in a minute. The 3 things were very simply this. The Cal State school system announced that they will not have in-person classes in the fall. It will be online only. For people who don't know, the Cal State school system is 23 different universities across the state of California, ironically none in the Pac-12. So it's San Diego State, it's Fresno State, it's San Jose State. Those are the ones that play major college football in the Mountain West. The Pac-12, however, USC is a private school, Stanford is a private school, and UCLA and UC Berkeley are part of the UC school system. So it's separate from the Cal State system. Very confusing, I know. But if you read that news on Tuesday, understand that as of right now, no Pac-12 school has announced publicly that they will be online only. So that's an important thing. The other thing, I think I mentioned it off the top, but my buddy Colin Cowherd says that he has heard from 2 different sources. For people who do not know, USC, University of Southern California, Clay Helton is set to open the season against Alabama in Jerry World. Colin Cowherd, my good friend, tweeted that he has heard from 2 separate people he trusts that the game will not be played, and Alabama is already looking for an alternative to that game. And finally, the last kind of really big thing was a little nugget that came out that the city of LA, which is obviously a part of the larger state of California, could be shut down for up to 3 more months. That headline was a little bit misleading, but those were the 3 things that had everyone convinced that there will be no college football involving the California schools going forward. And I don't believe it, and I don't buy it, and I want to explain why. But before I do explain why, I do want to say something very simple, and that is this, is that over the next couple minutes on this podcast, it's going to get a little bit Corona heavy, and it's going to get a little bit political. And I hope you guys know at this point, I don't do this show. I don't do politics. I tend to not talk about those things because they do not pertain to why you guys listen to this show. You want to hear sports and you want to talk sports. But in this case, the medical world and the political world are overlapping with the college football world. And I would be remiss, I would be doing you as an audience the disservice of avoiding this topic if I didn't at least sort of delve into politics and delve into medical stuff. I promise this isn't going to be my anti-corona rant or an anti-Gavin Newsom or anti-President Trump rant. This is just me taking the facts available to me as it pertains to medicine, as it pertains to politics, and applying it to the sports world. If you don't want to hear about coronavirus, if you're tired of that stuff, I get it. Fast forward to Coach Muss. I may also talk a little college hoops on the back end. But it's not a political rant. But I want to let you guys know that when it comes to this stuff, I have to talk about it because it is dipping into the sports world. And what I would also say is this. I don't want to hear from any of you, well, Aaron, you're not a medical professional. You're not a this. You're not a that. I understand I'm not a medical professional. But I'm treating this the same way that I treat anything else when I talk about on the show. Listen, I never played defensive back in the SEC, but I still talk about Joe Burrow on this show, and I still talk about Tua on this show. And believe it or not, I know it's going to sound crazy because I'm 5'10 and slow. I never played point guard in college basketball either. That doesn't stop me from talking about Zion or Duke or Kentucky or UCLA or whatever. What I have to do is, as part of my job, take the information that I have available to me and form opinions based off that. I should mention, by the way, that's how I got into a little Twitter beef with another media member, but we've squashed it. I'm over it. Don't want to talk about it. Certainly don't want to talk poorly about somebody else on my show that can't defend themselves. But this is what happens. I give out opinions based on the information that I have, and as it pertains to the coronavirus, I have to talk about that as it pertains to college football. So let's start with this college football notion that college football is not going to be played. And it's because of the 3 reasons I mentioned. 1, the Cal State school system is shut down. 2, Colin Cowherd reported that USC Alabama is going to eventually be called off. And 3, the stay-at-home order, some believe, will be extended until maybe potentially 3 more months in LA, which actually isn't factually correct. So I'll get into that in a minute. But I guess the biggest, broadest takeaway that I would say is very simply this, is that while it doesn't feel like there is a lot of time between now and college football, in many ways there aren't, but in many ways there are. And by the way, I should go back even to when this coronavirus thing first happened and say that I was one of the first people saying, like, listen, July 1st, July 15th at the latest, we got to get going on college football. So it's not quite as much time as people think, but it is still more time than people realize. And so just to give you a frame of reference, most of the country shut down on May 16th in some way, shape, or form in lockdown. Now, every state's a little bit different, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But most, it was March 16th, which was the Monday after all the sports, Rudy Gobert stuff happens Wednesday, Thursday, the NCAA tournament's canceled. Some states went into lockdown immediately, but most states went into lockdown on March 16th. So if you extrapolate out March 16th to the day that we are speaking now, which is May 14th, that was 59 days ago. It feels like a lifetime, but it was only 59 days ago. Why do I bring it up? It's because 59 days from now, we're talking the time from the time the virus first shut down the country to now was 59 days. 59 days in the future is still only July 14th, which, by the way, shout out to my wife. That's her birthday. Better not forget that one. But I bring it up because it's still a lot of time. And then on top of the fact that it's 59 days just to the middle of July, after that, it would still be another 46 days until week 0 of the college football season. I bring it up because that is 105 days between now and week 0. And it is 12 days, if my math is correct, between now and the first full Saturday of college football. And that doesn't seem like a long time, but it really is when you really think about it. Because just think about how much the climate of this virus has changed over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks as opposed to where it was on March 16th. March 16th, and again, this is where I'm getting a little medical, a little political. March 16th, it was craziness in the streets. We didn't have any information on this. We didn't know how many people were going to get infected. We didn't know how many people were going to die. You saw these crazy projections that it could be in the millions across the globe, and everybody was in danger. And now you fast forward a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. The virus and the tone of the virus is a lot different. And so for me, I even think back to where we were 2-3 weeks ago and how we were talking about this virus. If you remember, it was about 3 weeks ago now, it was 20 or so days that Georgia became the first state to announce that they were going to reopen. Again, these are facts. This is not my opinion. This is facts. I'm taking medical facts to prove my point. 20 days ago, Georgia opened, and all we heard was, oh my God, the case rates are going to spike, and there's going to be people dropping dead in the streets. And am I being a little sarcastic? Yeah, maybe. I know many of you live in Georgia, and I don't want to speak for you. I'm sure some of you are protecting yourself. But at the same time, the rates have actually gone down in Georgia since the state opened up. In Tennessee, the rates have gone down, have never really peaked the way people thought they would. And so if you even think about how different the conversation was 2-3 weeks ago than it is right now, then think about how different the conversation will be 2 or 3 weeks from now. You start to realize we actually do still have time on our side as it pertains to California specifically, because California is kind of the epicenter of this stuff, right? Everyone's saying, California's going to screw up college football for everybody. And I'm not going to lie. It really kind of might if we're not careful. But what I can tell you is living in California, I can tell you that the climate and the thirst for more freedom and more looseness has changed in the last few weeks. I really actually think it kind of changed that day that all those pictures came out of people on the beach when, if you remember, the beaches were open. A ton of people went. The state of California got backlash, and the governor immediately shut down the beaches. Well, I'm telling you, I don't know how it played nationally, but here locally in California, I can tell you this. We were in the middle of a heat wave. It was over 100 degrees, and many families in this city do not have air conditioning, believe it or not. Because it's not super humid, there are a lot of families in this state that do not have air conditioning. And so why do I bring it up? It's because when you're locked when you're locked up, when you don't have air conditioning, when it's 100 degrees, when in many cases you have families like everywhere with 2, 3, 4 children in a small space on a weekend, you got to get them out of the house. You take them to the beach. When the governor then shut down the beaches, I'm just telling you the climate in the city changed. The climate in the state changed where we said, listen, we have done our part. You got to give us some wiggle room here. And so I give credit to the citizens of California because the patience ran thin around that time. And I can tell you that even in the last week or two, things have changed. Beaches are now reopened. Hiking trails are now reopened. Many restaurants, not in LA, but outside of the city in some more rural areas, are allowing for in-person dining. Takeout, more places are open for curbside pickup. So even in California, this liberal place that everybody hates, and I'm not trying to do politics, I'm just stating facts, the tone has changed. People have lost patience, and they will continue to lose patience if things aren't loosened up a little bit, especially, again, given the fact that the data presented is saying that this virus isn't nearly as deadly as we thought it was, and certainly not to most people that aren't super elderly or don't have medical issues. So that's the first part, is the climate has changed so much in 2 or 3 weeks, really since I think Georgia opened, and it will continue to change going forward. I think the other thing you have to consider as it pertains to the city of Los Angeles and the state of California is that there are a lot of really important people that want to have sports go off as planned. What do I mean by that? Don't even think about just college football week 1, right? Think about the NBA. I can tell you this. I've lived in LA for almost a decade now, 6, 7 years, whatever it is. There is nothing more important in the city of LA than the Los Angeles Lakers, and this is the Los Angeles Lakers' best chance to win a championship in probably 8 or 9 years. People will not be happy if that team is not able to continue its season because of people in political positions not allowing them to continue their season. I'll take it a step further. Outside of college or outside of the NBA, the Rams. Okay, how about this? Keep in mind, the Rams are set to open a $1 billion stadium that the owner of the Rams, Stan Kroenke, paid for out of pocket. Why do I bring that up? It's because on Wednesday, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, came out and said, hey, people, if you live in a state that doesn't allow professional sports, feel free to bring your teams down to Florida. We will gladly host them. You don't think that Stan Kroenke, one of the richest men in America, one of the most powerful people in California, if he's not allowed to open his stadium on that first weekend, which, by the way, is still 120 or so days from now, you think Stan Kroenke's not going to put some political pressure behind the scenes on the politicians in the state of California? How about USC football? I know everyone thinks USC football is a joke. I know everyone thinks Clay Helton is a joke. I'm just telling you, there are some very powerful people at USC that can really ratchet things up if it does not feel like USC is going to be able to play college football this fall, and certainly not open against Alabama, which I think is another factor to go back to what I said a minute ago. You know, I just referenced the fact that Georgia is open and that Tennessee is open and Texas has really loosened some things. I'll also tell you this. I think from the sports perspective now, I know of multiple schools in the South that plan on having kids back on campus in some degree over the next couple weeks. Don't want to name the schools, don't want to say which ones. By the way, for people listening for Coach Muss, it's not Arkansas, because Arkansas, Coach Muss said they're waiting on word from their AD, they're waiting on word from from the governor and all that stuff. But I know of other states or other schools in the South where the restrictions are loose that plan on having kids back on campus soon. By the way, I should mention, Dan Mullen even said it this week. He said when gyms are open in the state of Florida, we plan on bringing our kids back because this is actually the safest place for them. The safest place for them where they can get first-class medical treatment, where they can get the healthiest, safest meals to eat prepared by professionals rather than going to the grocery store with their parents. So Dan Mullen's already said, When the gym's open, we plan on bringing our kids back so they can work out in our facilities with our medical staff and all that stuff. So I bring this up because when that starts to happen, when it becomes public that multiple schools in the South have kids on campus, I guarantee you, again, the political pressure is going to be put on the politicians. I keep saying political pressure on the politicians, but it's the only way to say it. On the politicians in the state of California, like, wait a second now. Florida has all their kids on campus. Georgia has this team had that, whatever. And we can't even get our kids to campus? Come on now. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of very wealthy people behind the scenes who are, they have either a financial or a personal investment in USC football, in UCLA football, in the Rams getting started on time. Maybe not the Chargers, don't really have a fan base, neither here nor there. Another factor, which I think is really important, I just mentioned how Ron DeSantis said that he plans on opening up Florida to any pro team that wants it. How about the fact that Arizona opened up on Wednesday? They announced it on Tuesday, but Arizona is basically opened up for business. I think this is another factor. Now I'm just going all over the place, but I think it's important to think about all these factors when you're, for you guys that live in the South and you can just do whatever you want. When you're at the bar this weekend and you're arguing with your buddies, college football is not going to start. Think about all these things I'm telling you. There are so much financial interest in getting college sports started, but there's also financial interest in other places. So I bring up Arizona because Arizona is kind of saying the same thing as Florida. Look, we're open for business. Major League Baseball, you want to bring your teams here to train? Bring them. By the way, it doesn't even have to do with sports. Think about this. California, as a standalone entity outside of the United States, is one of the biggest economies in the world. It is bigger as an economy than most countries across the world. So why do I bring it up? It's because what happens with Arizona open, with Nevada starting to open up. They have opened up restaurants now for in-person dining. The casinos are on their way. I'm just telling you right now, I'm already planning a trip to Vegas with the boys for the summer. I'm already planning with my wife. I told my wife this morning, listen, if we can't go anywhere in California, let's hop on a $90 Southwest flight and go to Arizona for a weekend. I don't care. I'm just trying to get out of town and do something. And so I bring this up because I believe that too is going to put political pressure on the folks in California to really kind of move things along. Because you can't have all your economic dollars, you can't have all your food, your hotels leaving the state when people want to do stuff in their own community. And so that kind of brings me to the second point about the idea that LA is going to be in a lockdown for the next 3 months. That really isn't actually true. If you actually kind of read the report, and listen, I tweeted it out and I said this is not going to happen, but this is part of what I'm talking about is the report kind of said that it wasn't an official report. To be clear and to backtrack, this report that came out on Tuesday said that the state of California, the city of LA could be in a lockdown through the next 3 months. And people freaked out and da-da-da-da. But if you actually read the report, what it said was one of the health officials said behind the scenes that they could see a scenario where the lockdown was still in place 3 months from now. Now, two things. One, not an official report. And two, what they were saying was some form of lockdown, which means that it's not going to be totally back to normal. It's not going to be walk around without a mask. It's not going to be full service dining. So that headline was a little bit misleading. And finally, I do want to hit on the last point, which is the Cal State University systems, the Cal State University system shutting down for online school only, no in-person classes at the schools that I mentioned: Fresno State, San Diego State, San Jose State, Cal State Bakersfield, Cal State Fullerton. Does not yet impact any of the Pac-12 schools, but it's still worth monitoring. And I'll tell you this, I think it was way too early on May 12th to come out and say that you're not going to have on-campus classes. And I do believe that by the time school starts, those kids will be in school. And here's why. It's because of something I told you 2 or 3 weeks ago that, again, AT was ahead on and everybody else is just starting to pick up on. And that's very simply this. Remember I told you 2 or 3 weeks ago I was talking to a college basketball coach, private school, won't name the school, but you can probably figure it out. It was a Wake Forest, Syracuse, USC, Vandy, Villanova type school. And he said to me, Aaron, I'm just telling you right now, we can't afford as a university not to bring kids back to campus. And that was like the light bulb moment for me where I was like, we're going to have kids on campus, and if we have kids on campus, we're going to have college football. So why do I bring it up? It's very simply this, is that as I said at the time, these campuses, they need students to be on campus to charge them full price. And I'm not going to go through the whole rant I did 2 weeks ago, but it is worth revisiting because, again, it's not just the football program that needs football games to be played. It's the entire university that needs kids to be on campus to fund the biology building, the new chemistry building, all the new professors they hired in the drama department. That money comes from charging students full price. And as I said 2 or 3 weeks ago, there are a lot of universities that can't afford to not charge full price, and you can't charge full price if you don't have kids on campus. And so that is why I believe that eventually the Cal State school system is going to reverse course. Because I just can't imagine being a parent of a college student and being willing to pay full price for my son or daughter to attend a college that they're not actually attending. So you mean to tell me my son or daughter is going to stay at home, I'm going to have to feed them, I'm going to have to house them, I'm going to have to pay for their water bill, their electric bill, and you still expect me to pay full price? Give me a break. You know what's going to start to happen over these next couple months? I want you to follow this, and I want you to say that Aaron Torres told you first. Sounds like I'm selling a mattress or something. It's an Aaron Torres guarantee. But here's the deal. May 13th, I'm saying it. What you are going to see is this. You are going to see in those Cal State schools that announce that they are not going to have students on campus, you are going to see either kids pull out of school, because again, if I was a parent, what I would tell my son or daughter, listen, rather than paying $20,000 for you to take Econ 101 and Drama 272, rather than paying $20,000 or $30,000, guess what? You're going to go to the local community college, and then when the school opens back up, you can reapply and go back there. It happens all the time. People leave school for a semester and end up coming back. It is going to happen now. If you're an out-of-state student, I think it's 100% certain. There's no way I'm paying an out-of-state price if my son or daughter is staying at home. I think you could see a lot of kids that are accepted to these schools that were planning on enrolling defer their enrollment to the spring for a year until the campus opens back up. And I think you could just see a lot of kids transfer out. And so I think when these schools, when the Cal State school system looks at the bottom line, the fiscal responsibility that they have to the universities, and they see all these kids pulling out over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they're going to say, you know what? We got to get these kids back on campus because we're not going to be able to afford to pay our bills. So I hope in some way, shape, or form that did help kind of just explain where we are at in college football. I think the biggest points that I would take away are 3 very simple things. 1, we still have time on our side. I would say that a firm decision by all of these schools doesn't need to be made really until about July 1st, which is still 6 full weeks away from now. And think again, how different is the tone now versus 2 or 3 weeks ago, and where is that tone going to be even in a place like California 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks from now? I think we'll get kids back on campus July 1st at the latest. I think maybe even earlier, and I think that we are going to have college football back in general. I would also say make sure, as I always tell you, read the fine print, that report about California being closed or LA being closed for another 3 months. That's not really what it said, and it wasn't an official report. I would also say LA can't afford for all of their citizens to just go to Arizona or go to Vegas and spend all their discretionary income. And finally, I do think that when you look at the number of students who are going to not be willing, parents not willing to pay for their students to their kids to go to school online, I think it's going to be eye-opening for these universities.